Well, let's talk to Natasha Hausdorff about this. She's a barrister and a member of UK Lawyers for Israel. Natasha, thank you for joining us once again.
It's great to be with you. Thank you, Julia.
What do you make of this? I mean, look, we don't know how long these. No, I don't think anyone ever knows how long any wars are going to last. We think of Vladimir Putin thought he'd invade Ukraine, and 2 weeks later he would have the charge of the whole of Ukraine. That's not gone so well for him. More than 2 years later, but I mean, was there any real expectation that the military intervention in Gaza would be over in just a matter of months?
I don't think there ever was. And Tzachi Hanegbi, the head of Israel's National Security Council, has most recently articulated what I think have been the concerns of many Israelis, but also military experts around the world for some time. This was never going to be a slow process, a particularly quick process. One of the reasons that Israel over the last 16 years didn't launch a full-scale operation against Hamas, despite the fact that they continued to fire missiles onto Israeli civilians throughout that period, was because this is no small undertaking.
Yeah.
I would say, however, that the current estimate is most likely as a result of the pace of the military operation. And there are many who are saying that that has been undoubtedly affected by a lot of the international rhetoric and pressure that has held Israel back from seeking to root out Hamas infrastructure in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things when the international community is condemning a possible military intervention in Rafah, the length of time that it took for Israel to then go into Rafah, which they currently are in, means that Hamas have time to regroup. And of course, if we really want this whole conflict to be over and for civilians to stop dying, as I think everyone would want who's of a right mind, it's very simple. Hamas can stop firing rockets into Israel, as they continue to do, and they could release all the hostages they have, and they could renounce their constitution of waging basically on October the 7th every single day of the year if they get the opportunity to annihilate Israel. I mean, they could end the war tomorrow, couldn't they?
And the tragedy of what you're setting out is that it is ultimately costing more lives, Palestinian and Israeli lives, holding Israel back in many respects from being able to defend itself properly, not just against Hamas, but also Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other terrorist groups, has had the effect of prolonging the suffering, including for Palestinian civilians who are caught up in all of this.
Yeah, indeed. And we've had obviously recent condemnation about that attack, military strike on Hamas, two Hamas leaders on Sunday night, close to a refugee camp near Rafah. And again, the condemnation has all been about that military strike and the decision well, initially it was they had bombed a refugee camp. The Israelis did not do that. They were going for a military compound. They didn't realise, we understand, that there were an awful lot of munitions stored there by Hamas fighters. They exploded, secondary, etc., explosions. And then, of course, these tents caught fire, and we saw this horrific loss of life. Some 45 people, we're told, died, many others injured. Again, that's from Hamas's health ministry. We'd have to know. We don't know whether we can trust those figures always. That's always an issue. But there doesn't seem to be any condemnation of Hamas deliberately putting weaponry and their fighters, their leaders, close to what should be a civilian and safe refugee camp. No one everyone who says they've got eyes on Rafah, there never seems to be any condemnation of that.
Far worse, in fact, because we saw the knee-jerk reaction to what happened on Sunday as being twofold. First of all, there was the resounding accusation and blame being placed on Israel, and subsequently these reports from residents of the Gaza Strip of secondary explosions make it rather clear that this is an ammunitions dump, unlawfully, of course, in breach of all of the laws of armed conflict that Hamas continues to flout, that has been responsible most likely for that tragic loss of life. But the second aspect of this is how last week's provisional measures order of the International Court of Justice has been misreported, as though it was an order that Israel cease its operations in Rafah entirely. And that combination of the misreporting the facts and the law and the determination most recently of the International Court of Justice is ultimately, I think, what we've been talking about in terms of the international pressure against Israel, which has prolonged this conflict and is badly misinforming the public as to the realities surrounding it.
Yeah, indeed. It is. I mean, especially when you look on social media, it is extraordinary the propaganda that is out there, and the complete and utter. The usual lines about the truth is still putting its boots on while the lies have already gone around the world. Natasha Hausdorff, really good to talk to you as always, barrister from UK Lawyers for Israel. Quick word from Philip Ingram on this, as a former senior military intelligence officer. The Gaza war. Did anyone really think this was just going to end quickly? Hamas have every interest to keep this going every single day. When you see these horrific images of Palestinian children dying, and the destruction to Gaza, that's a propaganda win for them, isn't it?
Oh, of course they do, and it's those that are backing Hamas as well want to keep this going, with Iran and Iranian links into Russia. I think that there are Russian links into this that's going on from what's happening. And Natasha highlighted some very important points there with regard to the disinformation campaign that's coming out, because we're in a year of elections across the globe. We've got EU elections coming up, we've got UK elections, we've got US elections. We're seeing the protest that there is in all of the different countries, and that's impacting domestic elections. So Hamas's disinformation campaign that is being broadcast and accelerated by some of the mainstream media outlets is impacting domestic politics. Hamas are going, hey, we're winning here.
Oh, absolutely. And then you get countries like Ireland and Norway and Spain adding to the majority of countries of the world saying, oh, great, we're going to recognise Palestinian states. Can we at least require them to lay down their weapons before we do that?
Well, define what a Palestinian state is, because it's not what Hamas is doing. The Palestinian Authority, who are in the West Bank, have had a civil war with Hamas. So who are you recognising?
Yeah, indeed.